to welcome each and every one of you here this morning for the dedication, the official dedication of the aircraft carrier Hornet Air, Sea, and Space Museum. And isn't she a beauty this morning? I would ask you now to please rise for the presentation of the colors and the singing of the national anthem. I would ask the 14th Marines of Alameda, California to present the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join Janine Leslie of Northwest Airlines from Ann Arbor, Michigan, in the singing of our national anthem, and please do so with gusto. There's a slight delay, ladies and gentlemen, and you're going to find out why in a few minutes.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight on the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets wriggling, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
14th Marines, retire the colors.
Never get you away, man. Just hit me.
How about a round of applause for the 14th Marines? Would you kindly remain standing for the invocation by Commander John Berger, Chaplain Corps, United States Navy, retired from San Jose, California.
Our invocational prayer this morning was written by one of Hornet's true plank owners, the commissioning chaplain, Commander Zahn. A family illness kept him from being here in his rightful place today. So listen up with special attention to the intensity of his prayer that he has written for the Hornet, the ship he loved, in which he lived and served. Shall we pray? Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, thou the ruler of the winds and the waves, We thank you that thou hast brought us to this happy day. We remember this ship, so dear to the hearts of many of us. It was originally commissioned to fight with her planes our nation's battles. In this task, as thou dost know, we are grateful, for she fulfilled her assignment with eminent distinction. Now, dear Lord, she is being recommissioned to an equally noble task. For all who are willing and who are able to see and to hear, here is Hornet's new message, loud and clear. Yours today is a blood-bought heritage. It has been secured for you at a frightful cost. Her plowing through stormy and surging seas, and the brilliant achievements of her young pilots, who in their planes bravely faced and subdued the enemy's ships and aircraft. Heavy was the necessary damage they inflicted on the enemy's homeland and his occupied islands. We remember them with gratitude, Almighty God, the gallant sacrifices of all who served, whether in planes or aboard ship. Those of us who were privileged to be there when danger was present will never forget. So let those who never had the privilege behold with awe and wonder what has been accomplished for them. As true Americans, they will take new courage and make new resolves to become even better citizens than they now are. They are good, but they can become better. They know, too, that with thy guidance and strength, O Lord, they will do it for this, our beloved America. Our crews and airmen sought neither reward nor commendation, save the satisfaction of knowing that their work was well done. In themselves, and in the prime of their youth, they offered themselves, and many did not return, for they laid down their lives in a noble cause. They shall not grow old as we that are left. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we shall remember them. Brightly shines their memory in our hearts, and so on this day, once again, we honor them. Now, in a sense, Hornet is a memorial, but she is much more. She becomes a sender now of life and light, of education, of encouragement, and of pride in the traditions of the Navy and Marine Corps on the seas and in the air. Never, O Lord, shall we rest upon the achievements of the past, but rather we look forward to each day as a rich opportunity to exemplify the ideals of freedom, duty, and loyalty to the highest, which have made our nation great. And now, Father of us all, on this day, we salute the new Hornet with affection, confidence, knowing that she will carry forward well her new commission with grace, dignity, and power. All these things we humbly pray, thou Lord of sea and skies. And all of God's children said amen. I can't hear you. Amen. A little louder, please.
Amen. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. I would like to once again welcome you on behalf of the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation to this beautiful morning on San Francisco Bay. Our program this morning features a list of distinguished speakers, a few exciting moments, a little red, white, and blue patriotism, and finally, after the conclusion of this ceremony, a world-class air show from the flight deck of Hornet, to which you are all invited. And if you look up, you will see the first DC-3 ever built, saluting the Hornet. This was General Hap Arnold's command post in World War II. Isn't she a beauty? Let me say a few words about how we got here and what we're celebrating. This great ship, which was launched in 1943, is a National Historic Landmark, so designated by the United States government in 1991. Hornet went to sea in November of 1993, and in the short time between November of 93 and the end of World War II, amassed the most spectacular combat record in the history of the United States Navy. And I should tell you that it's a lucky ship, because Hornet, while engaged by the enemy 59 times in serious heavy combat, never suffered a scratch. And take a look at her. She's as beautiful today as she was in 1943. Ladies and gentlemen, this is 31,000 Turks. I would like to introduce a series of speakers, each of whom has a little bit of a different message for you. They've all promised to be brief, so we're going to get through the program without further ado. And let me first introduce to you the delegate to the Congress of the United States from Guam. And this ship played a very important role on the territory of Guam. He's a member of the House of Representatives since 1993, graduate of Cal State. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Robert A. Underwood.
Thank you very much. Hafade Todos Hamzo. I know many of you have been to Guam, and I know that this ship plays a very special role in our history. Coming back, to all the distinguished guests on the podium, and especially those of you who are World War II veterans, and I'd like to shake each one of your hands, because if it hadn't been for this ship, I may not be here today. I appreciate, and I want to talk a little bit about World War II. A ship like this provides not only for the defense of our ideals and for our way of life, it benefits us in very special ways. And for the people of Guam, they are direct beneficiaries of the activities of the USS Hornet in 1944. The liberation of Guam, which was part of the battle and the campaign of the Marianas Islands, and the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, the liberation of Guam was participated in by the USS Hornet. And the liberation of Guam has a very special message, I think, to America over and above all the other battles that took place in World War II, because it was the liberation of fellow Americans. Guam was the only territory of the United States occupied by the enemy during World War II in which people lived. And so the memories of the people of Guam, the memories of children and grandchildren today who look back to the experiences of their parents and their grandparents and hear about the trials and tribulations which they endured during World War II are enriched by constantly drawing attention to the activities of the liberators. And our experience on Guam was really a story of two sets of liberators. There was one group of liberators, the Navy and the Marine Corps, and even a reserve army unit that came in from the sea. But there was also the liberators from within. One came down from the mountains, one came from the sea. Some came from places like California and Brooklyn and Des Moines, and others came from places like Hagad and Dedido and Sinanya. One wore rags, the other was in uniform. And they had a very special meeting on the island of Guam. And that was the meeting of two groups of people who decided that they would plant the ideals of democracy and freedom in a place that once was America and was again regained as America. I want to salute all of the people who made this day possible, the recommissioning of the USS Hornet. I know, and I want you to all think about the special relationship that this ship has with the people of Guam. And also I want to invite all of you, especially those of you who may have served on the Hornet at the time of the liberation of Guam and perhaps even since then, to come back to Guam. You're not going to see the same Guam that you once saw. You're going to see an even more beautiful Guam. And certainly on behalf of the people of Guam, thank you very much.
very much, Delegate Underwood. Next is our Congresswoman from here in the 9th Congressional District from Oakland, California. She took office in April of 1998, so she's a newcomer to inside the Beltway, but she replaced the legendary Ron Dellums in Congress. She worked for him, so she's going to carry on that great tradition of leadership. Please welcome Congresswoman Barbara Lee from the 9th Congressional District.
Good morning. Let me just say how good it is to be home. And let me say thank you very much for inviting me to be with you today. And I am very pleased and honored to join with you in the recommissioning and dedication of the USS Hornet. I would like to first extend my thanks and appreciation to retired Colonel Conway Jones and Judy Laws and their staff for working so hard on this important project, which really brings us all today for this glorious celebration. It's important to acknowledge this occasion because of the incredible history of the USS Hornet, which we are hearing from our speakers today. But since the Hornet's retirement, it has been acquired from the Department of Navy by the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation and renamed the USS Hornet Museum. The USS Hornet Museum, which will be open very soon to the community, will serve as a testament to the dedication of the men and women who have served aboard the ship over the past half-century. So its rich history is sure to be enjoyed by all. The Hornet's transformation into a museum is in keeping with our base closure and conversion initiatives, which have received significant support from President Clinton and the Secretary of Defense, William Cohen, and also through an effort which I helped to establish, which I'm very proud of, and that is the California Organized Investment Network. Building on the exemplary work of my predecessor, Congressman Ron Dellums, and the staff at the Defense Department, Mayor Appizato, and our elected officials and the entire community here in Alameda, we can be proud to recognize this project as an important part of that reuse effort and to point to the USS Hornet as an example of productive, economically sensible, and community-oriented conversion. At this time, I would like to read a letter from the Vice President of the United States, Mr. Al Gore. He, Secretary Cohen, and several other members of the President's Cabinet and administration have expressed great support for the base reuse work that we have undertaken here in Alameda. Dear friends, I am pleased to have this opportunity to send my personal greetings to everyone associated with the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation. While I regret that I cannot be with you in person, I want to offer my best wishes to all of you. On the occasion of the gala dedication of the USS Hornet Museum, I especially want to thank your organization for the work you are doing to preserve a national treasure for generations of Americans to enjoy. As a leading player in two of the most significant events of the 20th century, World War II and the recovery of the Apollo 2 space capsule containing the first men to walk on the moon, the USS Hornet has played an important role in the history of the United States. This museum will serve as an educational tool for the young and the old, ensuring that the legacy of this great aircraft carrier is not forgotten. Again, please accept my congratulations during this special occasion. Sincerely, Al Gore. Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate everyone on this very important day, and I ask that you support our continued conversion and reuse efforts, and that you encourage your friends and family to participate in future activities sponsored by the USS Hornet Museum. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Acquisition of this carrier and will continue to play a key role as we go forward for the full redevelopment of the ship and the visitor center and all the other things that will go on here in the near future. I'd like to introduce the mayor of the city of Alameda. He's been the mayor since 1994, but more importantly, he served a career in the United States Marine Corps, retiring as a colonel in 1983. Please welcome the Honorable Ralph Apposado.
I can assure you, being mayor is a lot more difficult than having been a colonel in the United States Marine Corps. Congresswoman Lee, and Mayor Ellilou Harris, who's down in the front, the mayor of Oakland, Mayor-elect Brown, Dr. Buzz Aldrin, and all you wonderful people, welcome to the city of Alameda. On April 25th, 1997, the United States Navy closed this historic Naval Air Station. Naval Air Station Alameda was home at one time to 4 nuclear aircraft carriers and many other warships of the fleet. It was probably the largest assembly of military power in the world. On that closure day in April of last year, I said the men and women of the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps would always be welcomed in our great city, even though the base had closed. Little did I know that we would welcome you all back so soon. Although the active duty fleet has departed, the love affair between the city of Alameda and the United States Navy and Marine Corps will never, never end. Today, we officially welcome back the aircraft carrier Hornet, back home to the city that will love her like no one else. On behalf of the citizens of Alameda, I want to especially thank Captain Jim Dodge, the last CO of this naval station, who had the vision of saving the USS Hornet as a memorial to the men and women who have served our country. Our thanks also to Captain, yes, he deserves it. Our thanks also to Captain Jerry Lutz and his cadre of Hornet volunteers who have made this day possible. You can all be very proud of yourselves. You are very, very special people. Alameda is a small island city of 75,000 wonderful people. We are surrounded by the much larger city-states of Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose, but we have the USS Hornet. So let the word go forth that our little island city no longer stands alone. Standing beside us is this great ship, the USS Hornet, and her new crew of volunteers. And what better message can we send the world than those spoken by Sir Winston Churchill to the House of Commons June 4th, 1940. Together we shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall never surrender. May God bless this great ship, each and every one of you, and may God bless our country. Thank you.
Family of California, I will say that most public officials, most elected officials usually go from mayor to governor. Our next speaker is going from governor to mayor. He's doing it because he is dedicating himself to revitalizing the city of Oakland and to help the people who need it most. And if there's anybody who can do it, it's our next speaker. We're honored to have former governor and now mayor-elect, the Honorable Jerry Brown.
I have to make a correction. I don't know that anyone who's been a mayor goes on to become governor. It tends to be a terminal position. The second point, people of Alameda, you have nothing to fear from Oakland. You don't have to have a defense. But if you do, you certainly have the wherewithal to intimidate even the most aggressive of neighbors. Now, since I'm a mayor-elect and not an official mayor, I'm going to confine my remarks to being briefer than anyone else. And so I just want to say, as I'm sitting next to this incredible mass of force and power, and I think of the history that it represents, it's a very sobering thought. And so I'm very happy to be here to celebrate its recommissioning as a memorial, as a monument, as a point of instruction for millions of people to come. And a memory and an awakening that the beauty that we're a part of, this wonderful place in the San Francisco Bay, invites us to creativity, to building, to peace, and it does so standing on the shoulders of the people who made that ship what it was, and as a reminder that peace and war, tragically, are inextricably linked. Thank you.
Because his company is generously footing the bill to cover the expenses of this dedication ceremony. And I'm talking about Boeing, that great American company. We have with us today, representing Boeing, which, as most of you know by now, just recently acquired and merged with McDonnell Douglas Corporation, which has made so many of the aircraft that have flown off the deck of Hornet, is Richard Hornet, who is Vice President for Domestic Business Development for the Military Aircraft and Missile Systems Group of the Boeing Corporation, a highly decorated Marine aviator, retired as a general, so he made it to the top. Most recently, he was the Deputy Commander of the Marine Expeditionary Force that fought in Desert Shield and Desert Storm. A graduate of Stanford and Pepperdine University, so he has strong local ties. Ladies and gentlemen, from the Boeing Corporation, please welcome General Hornet.
Spike, thank you very much. This is just pure good fun for me. As you heard, I grew up in the Bay Area, went to school here. I intend to return. But to be able to come back on a day like this and to participate in this extraordinary ceremony, I think I would call it an energetic celebration, is a real honor. That celebration of bringing into being a remarkable vision. And that vision is preserving the Hornet legacy. That legacy earned through the courage, dedication, and the fighting spirit of those sailors and Marines who went to sea in this unbelievable ship. And I also must say thanks to the dedication, the perseverance of the foundation and its supporters, that legacy that we see here before us will live for generations to come and act as a symbol of what this country is all about. Hornet is a proud name. This great ship, the 7 before her, and now in the form of the backbone of Navy and Marine Corps tactical aviation, the F-18 Hornet, the best strike fighter in the world. To the foundation, I just say well done. And to all of the supporters who poured their energy into making this day possible and preserving this ship, God bless you and thank you. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, representing the United States Navy, the active Navy, I'm pleased to introduce to you the superintendent of the Naval Postgraduate School in lovely Monterey, California, a naval aviator, helicopters, former CEO of the USS Incheon and the USS Wasp, 2 great ships. May I present to you Admiral Bob Chaplin.
Good morning, and what a great, great Navy Day. In fact, this has been a great Navy week for me. Yesterday I got to participate in the induction of 721 new sailors into the Navy. And if anybody has any disparaging remarks about the youth of the United States, I encourage them to go to one of those graduation ceremonies, because you'll think nothing but great things of our youth now. But I'm a little bit humbled being up here on the podium today with the great speakers behind me, but I'm more humbled by those of you in front of me that have served on the Hornet in the past. I only hope that I can, just in a little way, carry on the great tradition that you have established for the United States Navy. As we look at this great ship, to my left, to your right, you know, CV-12, when her keel was originally laid, she was to be Kearsarge. However, when CV-8 was sunk at Santa Cruz, it was decided that we could not let the great name Hornet not be commissioned, and so they quickly changed CV-12 to become the USS Hornet. And she rose like no other ship before her. With only 2 weeks of refresher training, she went to war and set a great record. She was, as mentioned earlier, attacked 59 times, but never once hit by an enemy bomb, an enemy shell, or an enemy kamikaze. And then with this great war record, she continued on to serve, and, as they said, recovered our crews from Apollo 11 and Apollo 12. So we've come together today to dedicate this great ship and make her a museum. And I challenge you, as you walk around the ship, as you're walking through the ship, listen, and you'll hear the engines of the Avengers, the engines of the Hellcats on the deck, revving up, getting ready to launch. You'll hear the footsteps, or you'll hear the cheers of the sailors as they recover those men that had walked on the moon. You'll hear, as they get ready to launch the airplanes to go out and attack the mighty ship Yamato. You'll hear the stringers creak as she fights the 120 knot winds as she's fighting the typhoon off Okinawa. I encourage each of you to sit and listen to that as you hear the great history of our nation, the great history of our Navy, as the ship talks to you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today, because we owe so much to this living legacy. And like I said, those of us in the Navy now only hope that we can continue to carry on the great tradition that has been set by this ship. And Mr. Mayor, with this ship here, I can assure you we have, the mighty nuclear carriers, Nimitz, Eisenhower, and Truman. But whenever they pass the Hornet, I can assure you they will render honors because of the great record that she has. So God bless the Hornet, God bless the United States Navy, and God bless America. Thank you.
Distinguished naval aviator who's flown bombers and everything else off this aircraft carrier in combat, a legend in the Bay Area. Please welcome Admiral Ed Wilson. Let's give him a big round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to be thankful for. We have Jim Dodge, who brought the Hornet over here, and we have Jerry Lutz and his committee that maintained it, fixed it up, all the volunteers, all the contributors, and God bless them. In World War II, this was a part of virtually every major engagement. It was 20 October 1944 when I led the last attack in on Leyte before the first wave hit the shore. There was over 700 ships involved, more ships than the United States Navy has today. We later were forced to fight the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which was the largest sea battle in the history of the world, and Hornet was there. And later, we hit Saigon, Cam Bay, and it was then French Indochina, now Vietnam. We came down and we hit Hong Kong, the first attacks on Hong Kong. That was January 16th, 1945. I led the attack in on the dry docks and the shipyards of Kowloon. We later found out that this was the first attack. We later found out that the Japanese guards and the POWs that were there, because Hong Kong surrendered on Christmas Day of 1941. They had been told that the Japanese had invaded the United States and were at the Mississippi River. When they saw our planes, they knew that they were lying to them. But ladies and gentlemen, this could happen someday if we don't maintain a strong defense posture. It was Plato in the 5th century BC who said, "Only the dead have seen the end of war." And in 25 centuries, he has never been proven wrong. There will always be war, and we must always be prepared. History shows that every time we've gone below 6% of our gross national product for national defense, we've gone to war. We're less than 4% now. We've got to get it up to 6 and maintain that, because our freedom is at stake. And we have a great legacy here to prove the power of our country.
I am about to introduce to you a genuine American hero. All of you know who he is, but I'd like to take a moment to I'll give you a little bit of his background, which you may not be aware of, so you realize what a gentleman, what a professional, and what an outstanding American Buzz Aldrin is. Our guest speaker stepped on this ship, set foot on this ship, and into history on July 24th, 1969, returning from the first trip that any human beings actually set foot in another world, coming back from the moon. He and Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins took the most spectacular and the most technologically dangerous trip in the history of mankind. It was certainly the greatest white-knuckle flight anybody's ever taken in their lives. Buzz Aldrin, a graduate of West Point, we won't hold that against him, has his PhD from MIT. He was a decorated combat fighter pilot in Korea, flying Sabre jets. He actually shot down 2 MiGs during that war. He has 4,500 hours of flying time, 290 of those hours in space. He was the backup command module pilot for Apollo 8. That was the first Apollo trip around the moon that did not include a landing. He's been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and 50 of the highest awards from the United States and other countries all around the world. He currently heads Starcraft Enterprises and lectures all over the world on space and space technology and the importance of continuing man's journey to the outer atmosphere. He's married to Lois Driggs Cannon of Phoenix, Arizona. Lois, where are you? Please stand up. This is Lois, a Stanford graduate, by the way. And I think we want to give them a special thanks because Buzz flew all night last night to get here. NASA was having their 40th anniversary gathering in Washington. He left early to come join us for this great celebration. So I think we owe him a great round of applause for that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you a genuine American hero, a combination of Charles Lindbergh, Sir Edmund Hillary, Dr. Bob Ballard of the Titanic fame, and a combination of Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa. Ladies and gentlemen, stand up and greet Dr. Buzz Aldrin.
Wow, that's a hell of an introduction. I wrote down on my notes
what am I doing here? I'm looking out at all of this Navy tradition. I had a choice of going to the Naval Academy. But I also knew that I got seasick. And I didn't want anything standing in the way of my getting into aviation. We're here because of heritage and pride. But we're also here because of freedom. Nobody asked any of these people to really be here. We're here because we're proud of the heritage that this day represents and that this fine machine represents. It's a fighting machine. We have a number of fighting machines similar to that today, guarding our security. 12 aircraft carriers comprise our security on the seas. 7 are nuclear carriers. 2 more are under construction, and great plans for new fighting machines using the seas, the air, and space to defend the freedoms that really bring us here. And this is a likely place, a very likely place for the final resting place of such a marvelous fighting lady as the Hornet represents. California, from San Diego to the northern borders, has supported our fighting forces and our forces that guard our peace. And Alameda in particular, as we know, has supported carriers over the years, continues to supply our forces. Now, how about my history? I'm very proud of my history, of my father and his aviation pioneering, his dedication. My first airplane ride was at the age of 2 in a Lockheed Vega. Great airplane, and it was painted to look like an eagle, not a wasp or a hornet. I think eagles eat wasps and hornets. I was a teenager growing up on the other coast in Montclair, New Jersey. I moved out and Yogi Berra moved in. But I'm proud of my heritage and the solid American spirit that I grew up in. I was a teenager during World War II, and my father served in the anti-submarine forces, the all-weather forces at Wright-Patterson, and he was Inspector General of the 13th Air Force in the Pacific. He had been an early aviation pioneer, sort of a contemporary of Jimmy Doolittle, whose name is so linked to the Hornet. They were both born in 1896. Aviation pioneers. Doolittle flew around the pylons, and my father was a judge of the air races. My father went to MIT. He was a very young person. About that time, he also went to, this is right after World War I, he went to the Philippines. He was an aide to a familiar name to all of you, Billy Mitchell. General Billy Mitchell. He met my mother over there, a daughter of an Army chaplain, and her name was Marion Moon. So I grew up thinking about the moon. As a matter of fact, one of my wife's favorite pictures is a little picture that I'm shown holding a ball, a little ball. I was a couple of years old. And she says, even then, he was fascinated with spherical objects. Pretty soon, he'd be flying around spherical objects, not just in the air, but coasting around them in orbit. My father went to MIT and got his doctor's degree, and then he helped Jimmy Doolittle by showing him how and who to get in touch with to get his doctor's degree also at MIT. They both worked for oil companies. This thing uses a lot of oil. However, they were both in aviation fuels. My father was with Standard Oil, New Jersey, and Jimmy Doolittle was with Royal Dutch Shell. But I grew up with that name and the name of pioneers, Orville Wright, the people that flew around the world in fighter aircraft, pioneering. My sister, right down here in the audience, sitting next to my wife, had her first flight after mine. And her first flight was in an amphibian that was christened by Amelia Earhart. So we grew up with that heritage, and I knew I was going to become a pilot. But I also knew I got seasick. Now, a little story. My father said, you know, you ought to get in the Navy because the Navy knows how to take care of their people. And I can see that in great evidence today. And over the years, I've seen how well the Navy League serves the interests of the families of the Navy. But my father had a slightly different slant on it, being in the Pacific Theater of Operations, World War II. He said the forces would go into a new island, and the Navy would build the officers' club. And then they dredged the harbor and they ran out of money. But they got some money from Washington to finish the harbor. And the Army Air Corps went in there and they laid down the runway with pierced steel planking so the airplanes could come in. And then they started with the officers' club. They ran out of money and they ended up in Quonset huts. So he says, you should try the Navy. Well, I almost think that he was right, because the Navy does want to control space, and they have selected some very prime talent to be in our space program. And I've been with many of them. I was serving our service, the Air Force, when I first heard about Sputnik and how that changed our world. But I tell you, it didn't make a big impact to me, because I was flying F-100s trying to defend against the Russians who would overrun Europe in 2 weeks. That's what I grew up with. And we transitioned to fighter bombers carrying nuclear weapons. And I tell you, for a young kid sitting on alert for the first time with a nuclear weapon on 5-minute alert, knowing that if that klaxon, that whistle goes, you're in that airplane and you know where you're going, you know what the confirmation authentication codes are, going in low level, and you're going to deliver your weapon. And you may not have a base to come back to. That's the kind of thing that I grew up with. In a squadron with my wonderful friend from West Point on the track team, Ed White. Ed talked me into getting into that squadron and named by this country, and I'm proud of John. Incidentally, I met John over in Korea. He was a Marine captain attached to the Air Force fighting 51st Fighter Wing with sabers. And boy, he liked those sabers, I tell you. I was a second lieutenant, and I could tell John from time to time, because I was looking at the big picture of things. I think that's where it started, that I began to look beyond just what's in it for me and my progression. Let me try and understand the big picture. So I wanted to be an assistant operations officer in the squadron and the group, so then I could tell John, who was an ops officer in another squadron, how many sabers his squadron could put up on the Yalu River. Just gave me a feeling of wanting to see the big picture. Now I'm at MIT, and I select my thesis, and the It needs to be something that'll help me in my career in 15 years. I looked at a couple of candidates. Re-entry of manned spacecraft. There are too many aerodynamicists already working on that problem. That's too difficult. Got to take the easier way sometimes. I looked at another one. How about humans landing on the moon? Man, that's not of much interest to the Air Force. That might never happen. But I know one thing we do need to do. We need to intercept other things. We need to do rendezvous. And before John Glenn flew on his flight, I selected my thesis of rendezvous in space. And I've continued to pursue that, and I'm using those principles now to keep hotels together in space, to have cycling orbits between Earth and Mars so we can improve our ways of getting there one day. But because of that thesis, eventually I think I was selected to be a part of the astronaut group. And I flew with Jim Lovell, wonderful Naval Academy pilot. I flew with him on Gemini 12, did some spacewalking because of my scuba diving. And the rendezvous failed, so we completed the radar. The radar failed, so we completed the rendezvous anyway. Then Jim was assigned to Apollo 8, and I was his backup. That was a wonderful mission, the first mission to go to the moon. What a gutsy decision that was. We were making a commitment, and we were following through on that commitment by our president to reach the moon before the end of the 60s. And Apollo 8 gave us about several months of advantage by going to the moon early, even if the lander wasn't ready. Then after that mission, Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and I were given the mission of Apollo 11 to land on the moon if Apollo 9 tested the lunar module successfully in Earth orbit, and then Apollo 10 tested it successfully in lunar orbit. And you all know the rest of that. We came back from the moon after landing on the 24th of July. We landed in the Pacific Ocean. Were picked up by the carrier. We were in those little funny suits to protect you people from the germs that we might have brought back. We were put in isolation. While we were in isolation, waiting to talk to our president, when the Navy would get their act together and everyone would be ready for the ceremony. There's a famous picture where I gave Ed Nixon's brother the high sign. While we're in that carrier, the flight surgeon with us showed us some of the TV film with Walter Cronkite speechless, a tear or two, the reaction of the world to our successes. And I tapped Neil on the shoulder and I said, Neil, look up there. We missed the whole thing. A lot of times I don't know why I say things the way I do, but what I think I had in mind was that it was not the rocks we brought back, it was not the words that we said, the questions that we answered. It was the spirit of the people that saw something happen throughout the world. Their lives were changed. They remember where they were when that event took place. And in a way, that's the value of doing things like that. Today, the skies are defended by Eagles, Air Force Eagles, and Navy Hornets. How lucky we are in this country. We made a commitment to go to the moon, and we carried it out. And years later, a president saw a world threatened by the economy of a country that had poured their resources into intercontinental ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads, and that country was intimidating the world. And that president said, I wonder if we could build a defense against what is threatening the world. And I'll tell you, what did you hear from the Kremlin and a few places here? Nuclear freeze, ABM treaty. Our president met with Gorbachev in Reykjavik, and he did not back down because he had the ability to make a commitment to carry through on that dream of a defense. And Gorbachev knew that. And when he couldn't talk Ronald Reagan out of that strategic defense, the course of the Cold War changed. And I believe that history will remember that we made a commitment once and we fulfilled it so gloriously. And the potential of making another commitment for strategic defense brought the Soviet economy, as shabby as we see it really is, to its knees, and the leaders there realized that they could not carry on. This is a great time as we approach the millennium. I'm working on the future of our space program. I'm working on an Apollo Millennium Commission on Space to study the future that involves you people, citizen explorers. You people have been excluded from our space program. The only people going up are test pilots, scientists, government employees. It's time to open this up to private citizens. And my group, ShareSpace, is dedicated to bring that about. And I see the next generation shuttle carrying 80 to 100 people up in space and flying rapidly to 1,000 flights a year. We need hotels up there. And as we take the evolution of the correct spacecraft and rockets, we'll put those hotels up there economically, not like a space station that takes 50 launches in 5 years to put it up there. We can put up a space station the way we did with that wonderful Saturn rocket. We put up Skylab with one launch. Those are the things that a great nation can do. We're living with the awareness of Tom Hanks and the entertainment industry in Apollo 13, from the Earth to the Moon, and a number of new things that I'm working on, television stories, books, science fiction. I wear a pin that I got yesterday, the 40th anniversary of NASA. The 30th anniversary of our Apollo flights are coming up, and next July is a wonderful opportunity to really make the public aware, and I hope that during that glorious week that commemorates the launch date of July 16th, the landing on the moon of July 20th, and a recovery date on this carrier of Apollo, of the July 24th, of the Apollo crew of Apollo 11 and the Apollo crew of Apollo 12. I wish they were here. I'm proud to represent them here. I'm going to be proud to represent John Glenn as I help Walter Cronkite, who needs no help, on CNN. And we need the support, Congressman Lee, of lots of things in the future. We have a wonderful opportunity, and I certainly hope the Vice President will help putting a nobler purpose on this wonderful opportunity of John Glenn when he comes down to say that he is the first of many private citizens, and that we can work on a solution that enables private citizens, very well qualified, journalists in space, the things we were afraid to do after the Challenger accident. We need to reopen up this space program that belongs to you people that are so proud of your heritage. This is the cap that I wore so proudly 29 years ago on board this wonderful carrier. And it's with great pleasure that I loaned this to the Heritage Museum on board the Hornet. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been my pleasure. God bless you.
How about a big round of applause for Buzz Aldrin? Let's hear it. Come on. Buzz, would you mind presenting your hat? Would you mind presenting your hat to the president of the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation, Captain Jerry Lutz. We need a ceremonial transfer of hats here. Finally in the Navy, ladies and gentlemen. This is a historic hat. Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Buzz Aldrin. And ladies and gentlemen, Buzz mentioned a gentleman who's sitting right down here, who when Buzz was on that trailer with Mike Collins and Neil Armstrong on board this ship, he was greeted by the President of the United States, Richard Nixon. And I'd like you to meet his kid brother who's with us today, Ed Nixon, who's sitting right here. Eddie, stand up. Turn around and say hello. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special moment for us all because it's the moment where we are going to transfer responsibility, symbolically, of this ship from Hornet CV-8 to Hornet CV-12 to the aircraft carrier Hornet Foundation. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the representatives of Hornet CV-8 and Hornet CV-12 present the ceremonial ship's log and glasses to the new man in charge, Captain Jerry Lutz. And to do this, and I want you all to be ready to salute not only these two gentlemen, but to all the Hornet crew members from both CV-8 and CV-12 that are in the audience, and I'm going to ask them to stand up. I'd like you to join me in welcoming, representing CV-8, the first Hornet from which Jimmy Doolittle's Raiders flew, which subsequently was sunk in October of 1942. I want you to meet Machinist Mate First Class Jerry DeRose. Jerry entered the Navy in 1940, and he was aboard, please step forward, Jerry. Jerry was aboard CV-8 when it was sunk in the Pacific. So give him a round of applause. I'd like to introduce, secondly, a plank owner of this ship, and a member of the original crew, Electrician's Mate First Class Ed Silveria, who entered the Navy in 1940. He survived the attack on Pearl Harbor aboard the USS San Francisco. Isn't that ironic? He served on this Hornet during the entire Pacific War until August of 1945. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Silveria. Now I will ask all Hornet crew members from CV-8 and CV-12, members of the Hornet Club, stand up and be recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a round of applause. These are our heroes. Gentlemen, I will now ask if you present the ceremonial log and glasses to the President of the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation, Jerry Lutz, ladies and gentlemen.
Owners, in behalf of the plank owners of number 8 and Hornet and of number 12, I give to you this, Captain Jerry Lutz, for responsibility of the new Hornet. And thank you very much.
Come on, let's give a big round of applause. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Now for our last speaker, who promises to be brief. He's the most important fellow in the foundation, our president. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Captain Jerry Lutz. And Captain Lutz is going to order the hoisting of the commission pennant, and he's going to order the manning of this ship. So it should be a pretty exciting moment. Give him a big round of applause, Captain Jerry Lutz.
We are very slightly behind schedule, so I'm going to make this very brief. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this phenomenal ceremony. We've been working on this for 3.5 years, and we have 600 volunteers, about 35 staff people, and just a dedicated board of trustees that put this together. And I want to thank all the volunteers for making this happen. Hornet's going to be a powerful asset in the community. It's going to be an economic engine, and it has the capability of being able to do all sorts of neat venues commercially. And we saw that last night, and we saw it the weekend before. And I want to thank Mayor Ralph Appizato and the city manager Jim Flint for working with us as we have gone through this process, and it was not easy to acquire a use permit, and the city was very user-friendly to us to be able to get through, and I thank you for that. I have a few other thank yous. I was going to go into a host of them, but I got to boil it down to 3. There's a special lady that's here, and her name is Molly Cole, and she's the owner of Astoria Metals. And we would not be here today if she didn't give up her rights to scrap the Hornet in trade to make it a museum. And she did that really without any kind of remuneration. We have a special plaque for her that's in the quarterdeck. Molly, are you here? She's not here. But
Jerry's! Back here.
Unfortunately, she's way in the back, but Molly, thank you very much for making this happen for us. I also want to thank 2 organizations that came forward. We got to the point where our application was just about ready to go, and everything looked fine, but we were short a few dollars, about $1.6 million to be able to complete the restoration of the ship. And we went all over the place with the federal government, with the state government, with grants and so on and so forth at the corporate doors. But there are 2 doors here that opened up locally that were just phenomenal. One was the Wayne and Gladys Valley Foundation, and I think that Steve Chandler, the president of the Valley Foundation, and John Stock are here, and they came forward and gave the first 50% of what we needed to be able to make this ship look like this. Wow. Then I want to give a special thanks to the Bank of America for also stepping forward, and they balanced the Valley Foundation with 50% of a loan. And that culminated into the resources that we needed to be able to complete it. And I want to thank Dick Rosenberg, who's the prior CEO of the Bank of America, and I also want to thank Don Rigo, the Senior Vice President, who has worked with us in an untired way here in the last 2 years to be able to make that happen. Don, are you here? There he is. He's back over there. Don, stand up again. Last thanks, we have a series of plank owners, about 1,700 folks that have kept our ship alive for the 3 years, giving us the resources we needed to be able to complete the study. And it's a very emotional situation when you receive letters for $25, $50, $100, and it is the source that keeps you going, and it's very gratifying. And for every one of you that are out there, plank owners, I'd like to have you all stand so that people can see who you are, please. Despite that's as brief as I can get, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. I think you'll enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you very much, Captain Jerry Lutz. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 other special folks on this platform who are not going to speak, but who've been critically important to the success of this foundation. The last commanding officer of this ship in 1970, please greet Admiral Carl Seiberlich. Admiral Seiberlich. And a more recent naval aviator and carrier commander who's done wonders for this foundation, ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Tom Mercer. Tom? And now I would like to call Captain Lutz forward one more time to direct the hoisting of the commissioning pennant.
Chief Signalman, hoist the commissioning pennant.
We would now like to order the manning of the ship, and I'll call on Captain Lutz once again to order the ship manned in the official opening of the Aircraft Carrier Museum. Captain Lutz.
Naval Sea Cadets, Naval Reservists, and Hornet volunteers man the ship.
Everybody up. ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Chief Engineer, is the ship manned and ready?
Turn on.
Ladies and gentlemen, in some ways this is the greatest day of my life. As a young officer in Kearney, New Jersey, I saw 7 of these magnificent ships die in the backwaters of Kearney, where there is a scrapyard. I'm going to very briefly describe what you could have seen today had it not been for Molly Koa and Astoria Metals. What you could have seen was an aircraft carrier dying in Hunters Point. Let me tell you how that goes. They cut the mast off, then they cut the island off. Then they cut the flight deck aft off so the bow comes down, so they come up and they cut the bow off so it's even. On the back of the ship, the one that's burned in memory forever, is the name Essex. I watched the Essex die in Kearney, New Jersey in 1975. The next thing they do is they cut it down level so there's nothing there but the flight deck. They cut the boilers out, they cut the engines out, they reduce it to nothing but a little box of steel that comes out of the water. We avoided that. Our volunteers who made this thing happen and the plank owners have avoided that. Ladies and gentlemen, your grandchildren's grandchildren will walk on the decks of this ship. Right next to me. Standing next to me is a young lady, Sarah Frankel, who is our christening lady for our very first day that we opened. She's a 4th grader here right in the city of Alameda, and she'd like to say a word or two to you.
I am very proud to be here today.
How about a round of applause for the Chief Engineer, Pete Clayton, who did in less than 5 months put the ship in this condition. Just before we close, I would like to call Father Ed Murray of the Catholic Diocese of San Francisco, who was a Navy chaplain, served aboard CBN 65, to please come forward for the benediction.
Let us pray. God, creator of all that is good and source of all life, we ask your blessing on all here today as we gather to dedicate the USS Hornet as she begins this new page of her history. She is a proud ship that has served our country with distinction from the end of the Second World War to the beginning of the age of space. May all those who climb her ladders and walk the decks sense the presence of all the crews that took her into harm's way, hear the roar of the aircraft engines, and feel the excitement of a ship underway. We thank you for those who have responded to call to go down to the sea in ships. Father, we ask your blessing on all the men and women who today serve this nation. May they continue in the rich tradition of the USS Hornet. Amen.
Could I ask you all to be seated for a couple of announcements, and then we're all done, and then we're going to go aboard the ship. First of all, you are all cordially, warmly, and enthusiastically invited aboard Hornet at the conclusion of this ceremony. Those of you in the VIP section who've paid your dues get to go aboard free. For the general public, it'll be a $5 per person charge, but it'll be well worth it because you'll be able to see the whole ship and go up to the flight deck for the air show. So what we'd like to do at the conclusion of the ceremony is ask the folks in the forward section to come aboard, take your time, and stay aboard, and go all the way up to the flight deck for refreshments and the show. And the general public, there are various stations where you can buy a ticket to come aboard. So I'd like to welcome you aboard on behalf of the Aircraft Carrier Hornet Foundation. We are now official. We're officially established, and we're open for visitation. So thank you all for coming very much. Would you mind standing one more time? And with all the gusto you can muster, join Janine Leslie and the Rich Martini Orchestra on the sponson with the loudest rendition of God Bless America that we can come up with. Janine, let's do it.
All the storm clouds gather far across the sea. Let us swear allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a
by proposing 3 cheers for USS Hornet. Let's hear it. Hip, hip. Hooray! Hip, hip. Hooray! One more time. Hip, hip. Hooray! That's it. Thank you very much.
Come to Bay Cruise. Now the Red and White Fleet, they didn't start sailing around San Francisco Bay yesterday, did they?
No, the Red and White has actually been here for well over 100 years, as you pointed out, under Teddy Roosevelt and
I told him we were talking, that's okay.
here she comes down. It brought the Great White Fleet into San Francisco Bay at the turn of the century. During the 1906 earthquake and fire, it brought Bank of America's money over to Oakland for safekeeping.
That was the last time that money was ever brought to Oakland for safekeeping out there.
I think we got a good fleet out of that. I don't know what happened to the money.
That's terrific. A great piece of San Francisco history, sailing as you mentioned, George, for over 100 years, the Red and White Fleet. And tell us a couple of the other destinations that the Red and White Fleet have around the Bay Area. I know you go from there to Jack London, or from San Francisco to Jack London. You have other destinations around the Bay, don't you?
We also provide service to Richmond, and of course probably one of the most popular services here in the Bay Area, the Bay Cruise that Red and White provides from historic Fisherman's Wharf.
Well, you've got a boat to catch, a very special boat to catch. Well, thank you very much indeed for spending time with us and letting us know about the service between Alameda and San Francisco to visit the Hornet, and that's the Red and White Fleet. Thank you very much indeed, David.
Thank you, and thanks to the USS Hornet.
Now we're going to go back to Bob Hope's lovely wife, Dolores, and in just a moment I've got rather an interesting interview for you. This is the man himself, Mr. Bob Hope. Maintenance angle, when you dive those aircraft and of course you pull out the bottom, when you return to the carrier, how long does it take to clean the footprints off the instrument panel when you're pulling?
In dive bombing, coming straight down and pulling out, we always pulled at least 6 Gs. We always blacked out. And when you started your pull out and you're coming back up, your blood would come back to your head and you could see. Now, the only time that I ever pulled much more, is I led an attack, and I had to get low on the ship and to hit it. And when I pulled out, I pulled 13 Gs on an SB-2C. It flew all right, but the wings were curved up, and the skin looked like it was a washboard, old-fashioned washboard.
Good heavens. Actually, it's testament to the strength of those aircraft that were built during that time. Even today's frontline fighters can sustain a maximum of 9 Gs. That's the action.
Because we got hit real bad at Clark Field near Manila, and the Mansfield, destroyer Mansfield 728 picked us up. So we finally got back aboard Hornet. At that time, the Hornet was giving 20 gallons of ice cream for every returned naval aviator, and would give 10 gallons of ice cream for a returned Marine aviator.
Is this why you're standing by, surrounded by Navy people, I assume?
Well, I want you to know I thought I was a Marine when we were flying off Guadalcanal because we were eating that same lousy chow they had too, and we were getting bombed damn near every night. And it was terrible for dive bombing at Guadalcanal because you'd walk through the mud. You'd walk through the mud to your plane, and when you finally were airborne, and when you made the attack, and all the mud would be dry, we always had zero gravity, just like the astronauts do. Zero gravity making our dive. So the mud would be all over the airport, and you'd have to move it aside off the site so you could see what the hell you're going to hit.
Good heavens. So again, coming aboard, as you were talking about before, you actually came aboard, and the tail hook, of course, is the one piece of apparatus that separates naval aircraft from all others, and that is the hook that stretches, that catches one of typically 4 wires that are stretched across the deck. Those are situated about 40 feet apart, go right across the deck, and the hook picks that up and brings the aircraft to a very rapid and exciting stop. If you happen to not have the capability of catching those, as you did with the tail hook shot away from your aircraft, the next best bet is this rather enlarged net like across the middle of a tennis court, where actually you make a headlong run at that, and what happens then, sir?
Well, that's what they have aboard ships these days. Back in World War II, this was a straight deck, and when you landed, the wires were closer together than they are in the current aircraft carriers, and also there was a barrier put up, just this sort of cables running across. So if you landed like I did with no tail hook, you just go up, your prop would engage the barrier, and you go up and you...
As the helicopter comes in to take station over top of the Survivor, he's going to be actually flying the helicopter in the direction of the wind, or into the wind. We have approximately 15 knots of wind out there right now. So he Dolphin helicopter in helicopter parlance, a high-speed pass. Headed back to Coast Guard Station, San Francisco. Frank Strickland, could you please meet your wife at the car? Frank Strickland, if you would please meet now, is owned and operated by Otis Spunkmeyer from Oakland, California here. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the C-41 of the Otis Spunkmeyer Company in its original Army colors. The C-41, otherwise known as the DC-3 or C-47. I'm just going to let you listen to the beautiful sound of round as he comes overhead. 175 horsepower Kidder 5-cylinder radial engine. It was also quite a fast aircraft for its time. 122 miles an hour was the cruising speed of this aircraft. But passing in review for you right now, ladies and gentlemen, some of the rarest warbirds, and we managed to collect 6 of them together for you here. These are the Ryan PT-22s. We don't hear anymore the sound of round being the sound of these radial engines on these magnificent aircraft.
Okay, they're going to be Yes? Oh, I thought this one right here. Yes, yes. Who is it? Oh. Look down there.
Next group of aircraft that's going to see coming through is Ryan's coming back in the next group on the left-hand side. We then go to the advanced trainers, which are the 86 or SNJ aircraft. These were the ones that moved the pilots from the master trainer up to the aircraft that had a tail wheel.
There they go. Look.
And a retractable ramp. And also the control of their principal pilot. The smoke must mean there's something wrong with the aircraft. They're just keeping themselves out in the sky for you.
Oh, look, Buster. Isn't that cool?
We've got a mixed element of aircraft right here. We have an AT-6 in the front. We have right behind that of the T-28s.
Oh, cool.
There's once again in distinctive Navy markings. The T-28 Trojan, as she was known, became the aircraft was probably used by more pilots than any other to carry and qualify, or C2, right behind the SNJ.
Is that it? They just let the...
And here come our SNJ.
Oh, it's not. Okay. See, the red and the blue.
Sweeping forward.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
The R-1340 designation. I know, I was about to tell people that you were an instructor pilot for the Navy. You just told everyone training Navy airmen in the T-34, correct?
That's affirmed, the T-34 Bravo model. And in my back seat I have a gentleman whose dad used to be in my former squadron at Navy Lemoore, and we've been over there.
He's coming up on the side, just overhead of Alameda here, Gordon, and I'll roll her over to the right. Give you a good plan view of the wing space on the MiG-17.
Roger, Randy, we see you up there, and turning around right now, you have about 3,000 sets of eyes on you. Rather uncomfortable position for a MiG-17, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, from what I hear from the original drivers of these airplanes, that shouldn't be a good thing, right?
Now, I was telling people about the big...
We're getting out a little bit further over here, Gordon, so we can place the motor up. I'll keep the smoke on and I'll come around. As I come by your bow, just go up your starboard side, I'll right off the bed. I'll get the airplane slowed down. It doesn't like to be close, too.
Well, you're pulling off about the 2.5 feet side right there, right?
Here we go. For you, Gordon. But then I can bring the nose up and put some of that airspeed into lift. The landing right in here at this point, I would just go ahead and lift down. But what I've done here, because we're over the water, is pull a little bit of power back in and go ahead and go around.
Well, that looked pretty controlled to me.
Yeah, as you know, when we do it at airports, do air shows at airports, I go ahead and land it on thing, and what we do is we set up two other helicopters, use them as a target, and I showed I can put it right where I want in between the people.
Jim, that's a rather unusual helicopter. What's the little pump there hanging off the bottom of the nose?
What that is a camera, Gordon, and we're shooting you while you're taking pictures of us, we're taking pictures of you. This is one of the most sophisticated camera helicopters in the world. It's got a gyro-stabilized camera in the nose, made for news gathering and such. But what I'm going to do here today is give you a little helicopter lesson.
Okay, I'll just...